5 is officially back, plus the AAC. Joe, I want to ask you, how do you think the shortened seasons in the Big Ten and the Pac-12 affect those conferences' playoff hopes? Because, right, the Big Ten's only playing 8 games. The Pac-12 is only playing 6 or 7. I think
well,
7.
The Pac-12 is obviously not going to make it in 6 games.
7, I think, yeah.
Even then, I don't see, in the Big Ten, Ohio State's going to be the front runner, but they're going to have to work for that playoff spot. I think they might be able to get it, but it's definitely going to be hard. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be weird, and they're going to have to reevaluate the process of picking who's going to be in the playoffs or just the playoff tournament in general this year. But it's definitely going to be weird, and I just don't be surprised if you don't see any Big Ten or Pac-12 teams in the playoffs this year due to just shortened seasons.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Pac-12 doesn't really have a realistic chance. I think, look, Oregon would have been a big potential front runner, but outside of that, I really can't wrap my brain around anyone from the Pac-12 who's going to A, go undefeated, and then B, be good enough for the playoff. I think you're most likely going to see the ACC get 2 teams or the SEC, depending on who performs. I think it's a realistic possibility. You could see Clemson and Notre Dame if Notre Dame notches at least 1 win over Clemson. For me, I think the Big Ten will get a bid. I don't think it'll get 2. I think Ohio State, as Joe said, is the clear front runner. I'm going to put my faith in Justin Fields. Michigan's not going to beat him. That's right. Harbaugh excels at losing to Ohio State every single year. I'm not going to bet against Justin Fields in that game. Penn State would be the challenge, but their star middle linebacker opted out of the season. Obviously, to lose KJ Hamler, their running back core, they usually put something good together, and their O-line's usually pretty good. Their defense is usually pretty solid as well. I just don't have as much faith in Penn State. I think Sean Clifford's still the quarterback. I'm not certain on that. Clifford last season, he was spotty. He definitely benefited from having a guy like Hamler in his receiving core. I think Penn State's tight end situation is usually pretty good. I have to refresh on it, but I think Ohio State's the clear front runner with Fields under center. Always managed to put together a good defense. The pass rush won't be as ferocious, obviously, without Chase Young. But I hear they've got some recruits coming in who will be able to at least make up some of what he left behind. My take is I think the Big Ten gets 1, the Pac-12 gets 0. I think that one's going to be Ohio State, and then we're just going to have to see what happens with the SEC and the ACC playing 10-game conference schedules. Joe, speaking of, everything remaining stable, nothing's been stable in this college football world. And obviously, in the middle of COVID, the preseason was truncated, schedules got altered, and the top 10 got pretty messed up last week. Oklahoma, number 3 team in the country with Spencer Rattler, loses at home to Kansas State. They lose to Kansas State for the 2nd straight year. Only difference is Kansas State this year isn't good at all. Last year, Kansas State had some talent. And, of course, LSU losing to Mississippi State, giving up 600 yards to the Stanford transfer QB KJ Costello, who was phenomenal. That defense looks depleted after the draft last season. So I want to talk to you, Joe. What do you think we learned about both of these teams? And do you think both are now out of the college football playoff race?
Well, I didn't see LSU. I saw it at the beginning of the season. LSU was a long shot to begin with. Joe Burrow, obviously, he's not there anymore if you haven't noticed. If he was there, they'd probably be winning games, but no, he's not there. And, he got demolished by a transfer from Stanford.
Yeah, KJ Costello. Man played about 1 or 2 games at Stanford in 2018.
623 yards is impressive. And LSU got a good defense last year, right?
Yeah, everyone went to the draft. And to be fair, I want to Derek Stingley Jr., potentially one of the best corners in the nation last season. Got to be clear here. Missed the game. He was hospitalized, not COVID-related. So for those of you who were anti-college football, relax. It wasn't related to COVID. There are a lot of COVID outbreaks on teams. This one wasn't. But he was out, so we have to say that. But Costello torched him.
Yeah. Also, Oklahoma. I mean, Texas fan, so I'm kind of biased, but it's not good when you lose to Kansas State. It's not a good look. And I know people are saying Bradley's going to has star potential, but I can't see it. And I know that's the Texas fan in me, but it's so hard when you throw 3 picks.
Yeah, 3 picks.
Like that's not star. A star doesn't do that. I mean, one of them was like not his fault.
Yeah, but a couple were.
Yeah, and unless he actually proves to me he can, not throw picks, then I'm just gonna start calling him Baker Mayfield, Browns Baker Mayfield, because that's what he's starting to look like to me.
Oof. That's early judgment, Joe. I agree with you. I think LSU's out of the playoff already. I don't see any scenario in which they can run the table the rest of the way. Alabama would obliterate them with the way they played this weekend. There was no defense whatsoever. Their offense looked okay. We knew their offense was going to take a step back. Miles Brennan is an incredibly talented quarterback. I think he had some impressive throws. But look, that offense is not the same as it was with Joe Burrow under center. Also, no Jamar Chase because he opts out. Obviously, Jefferson goes pro. Thad Moss is gone. Edwards-Helaire is gone. They've lost a lot. But Miles Brennan isn't Joe Burrow, so we have to be clear here. But that offense looked okay. The problem was the defense just looked like a skeleton of its former self. It looked like LSU week 5 last year, or LSU against Texas in week 2 last year. Their defense was non-existent, and the only problem was their offense was good enough to just keep pace in the shootout. I will say, Joe, I think Oklahoma still has a chance. It's a really, really, really bad loss. They're more than capable of running the table the rest of the way. I think Texas is a better football team right now. I disagree with you on Spencer Rattler a little bit. I think he's young. He's young, obviously. It's his first time starting. He's got star potential. The problem for me with Rattler was he looked kind of like Jameis in college. 3 picks and obviously threw 4 touchdowns. We can't downplay that at all. He made some really impressive throws. I believe he also ran for one. And he's really good mobility-wise, but is he Kyler Murray? Is he Jalen Hurts? Is he Baker Mayfield? Absolutely not. I don't think he's going to win the Heisman. I think Trevor Lawrence is way miles above him. I think Justin Fields, even depending on his season, will finish above him as well. So
I also think being 1-1 in such a shortened season is not good for making the playoffs. You can still do it, but after that loss, they just dropped 15 in the rankings.
Yeah, and rightfully. I mean, you lose at home to a Kansas State team that lost to Arkansas State the previous week. This is an ugly, ugly loss. I'm just saying that, right? If they manage to run the table the rest of the way, they'll pull off multiple wins over Texas if that happens. And then in that case, right, they would potentially be playoff eligible. Also, if you think about it, if Clemson runs the table in the ACC, Notre Dame's out of question. There's no one else in the ACC that has a chance. You have one team that runs the table in the SEC. You have a feasible chance where a 1-loss Big 12 champion Oklahoma could step in. But I agree with you, Joe. It certainly sets them back. They can't afford to lose another game or even really play close with anybody inferior besides
Texas.
Texas.
When you got teams like Ohio State joining the mix, it's going to be more challenging. If the Big Ten wasn't in discussion right now, I definitely think that getting to the playoffs would be easier. But now you got Penn State, Ohio State.
There's the out on Wisconsin. We never know what will happen with Wisconsin.
Wisconsin ranked 1 below Oklahoma right now.
Actually. Yeah, and the thing about Wisconsin is we just don't know what we're gonna get. I think Cohen's back, but obviously loses Jonathan Taylor, which that was the way Wisconsin likes to play is it's run bully ball offense. I know Joe loves that term. And then on defense they clamp you, so they win a lot of games old school. But we're just gonna have to see how their O-line and their run game holds up. Also, look, there's a factor we have to take into account here with COVID. Wisconsin is one of the schools that had to do a mandatory quarantine a few weeks ago because of COVID cases. I don't think they've had an outbreak that's bad enough on the football team yet. But again, at all of these schools, we have to consider how COVID is going to factor into the mix. And it's not like Wisconsin has this under control.
COVID is definitely going to be the biggest challenge for every team. Because especially when playoffs are set and teams go, the 4 teams are picked. If one of them gets COVID, then that's just the end of the playoffs for like
everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it might come back the season. Also, I doubt the NCAA, like they run the college football still, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I doubt they're gonna just say, yeah, one team has a COVID outbreak. We're not gonna play the rest of the season anymore. No, I think they're gonna just quarantine those 2 teams that played each other, and then just keep going on with the season.
I won't lie. I think the college football playoffs going to get bubbled.
You think so?
Yeah, I think that it's. I mean, look, it's 4 teams, and sure, there's like a ton of personnel and players on each team, but I bet the NCAA is going to take ample measures to ensure that they play uninterrupted the playoff.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Also, I mean, look, the NCAA's talked about bubbling early season basketball tournaments, and we'll get into that as the college basketball season approaches. Obviously, we're
soon, November 24th.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's literally like almost less than 2 months away. Like, it's crazy. And of course, Davidson is one of those teams that might get bubbled in Nashville, so that'll be interesting. I see them potentially bubbling it. We'll see. Last question on the college football before we go into the NBA finals here, Joe. Who is your team to beat early? I think you know mine. Mine's pretty clear.
Who's yours?
Clemson.
Oh.
I mean, I think, right, you have Trevor Lawrence, ETN. Justin Ross is out for the season, but they still have shown an impressive receiving core. The only team in the ACC, in my opinion, even capable of beating them is Notre Dame. I think North Carolina is really impressive, but I don't see them competing with Clemson like they did last year. For me, it has to be the Tigers.
That's a very broad term, seeing as 50 teams have that name. But I would agree with you, but in spirit of having a different answer than my friend here, I'm going to have to say it's going to be hard. I'm going to say Florida.
It's a good point. They looked really impressive this week.
Yeah, I can see Florida definitely making the playoffs this year, and maybe even it's going to be hard because Clemson is obviously the clear favorite to win it all. But you never know. Football is very random. Also, COVID. But I can definitely see Florida being good enough to make the finals, maybe even beat Clemson. If you get them out of the way earlier, then that just gives you enough room to just not have to worry about them in the long run.
For me, I agree. Obviously, I think Clemson. I think Florida's a great point. Florida is my dark horse to win it all. Kyle Trask looked incredible last weekend, and look, Ole Miss isn't necessarily the best team out there, but Trask torched them. His connection with Andrew Pitts was really impressive. The tight end. I thought losing Van Jefferson would hurt them, and C.J. Henderson on defense, but the pass rush still looks decent. This defense isn't what it was last year, gave up 38, but I think that this Florida team, if all goes right, could be similar to the LSU team that won it last year. I won't say the offense will be as good. Trask is not Joe Burrow, but he looked really good last week, and I don't want to overreact to a performance against Ole Miss, but he looked miles better than he looked when he came in relief for Felipe Franks last year. So I think Florida is a very good team, and I think they're capable of hanging with almost anyone in the SEC. I think the SEC is wide open this year. I think Alabama's obviously the favorite, but you look Florida, you could make a case for Georgia. I think their offense is kind of broken. And then even distantly, there's the case for Auburn. I'm still not ready to put faith in Bo Nix yet, but we'll see.
And obviously, Vanderbilt.
Yeah, you gave Texas A&M a run for their money. By the way, we didn't include Texas A&M in that category because of the struggles. I think Kellen Mond has been chronically overrated.
Yeah, to be fair, though, Vanderbilt played some good defense that game. But obviously, they're not good. So
yeah, I think Alabama's going to have a field day with A&M this week.
Yeah. Going to be a good game, though, I think. Both ranked teams, obviously.
Yeah.